Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, back to the Valley of the Judged. I am your one and only gaming monk, better known as Mildra, and with me is my good brother here in the temple, the man of 1,000 runes, the CEO of Zadari Enterprises, and the the bane of my fucking existence, Good Brother Xanatrix.
Zadari Enterprises would like to remind you that the guy who made the Demons Can Be Good 2 video essay about free rent at the funeral, or free rent beyond Journey's End, or however you want to call it, Soul can mean things like elegy, made such a bad set of points on his video essay that somebody I had never heard of came across my feed and had a bunch of really nice laser-focused points that show how this guy is a fucking moron. Oh, so people can sometimes discern what is right or wrong automatically, and they can make choices between these things that automatically makes them able to make moral decisions, makes them moral actors. By that logic, knowing things that are good and bad for survival, a lion is a moral actor. No, that guy's retarded, and he's rightfully getting shit on, and he rightfully noped out and made himself and privated himself on Twitter and went over to Blue Sky like a fucking coward, because he did, because he's a coward, because his entire sophistry and fucking pedantic argument boils down to, well, maybe this demon can choose a different moral structure at some point. When
That's about as useful. That's about as useful as a Coconut Island analogy.
Well, see, there's one other thing. A point he made that was actually wrong. He said there's nothing in the show or the manga that says that demons cannot make different moral choices like humans can. Why is somebody like Yubel, who is a very murderous mage but she's human, not considered completely fucking evil for the murder she does and must be wiped out compared to the demons, when there's no effective difference between them? And the thing he forgot is demons were stated to be biologically unable to care. They have no sense of empathy. If they do, it's used literally as a weapon and only as a weapon. This guy's retarded, and I'm glad that he noped out like a fucking coward. But that's enough of my sidebar soapbox today. Let's get started.
Yeah. I mean, I could say I'm disappointed that guy noped out, but then again, disappointment is probably something he's used to hearing at family reunions.
I mean, if I'm going to quote one of my favorite quotes from one of my favorite abridged series, he pussed out like a bitch.
But demons is a apropos thing to bring up, since, as mentioned earlier, December is apparently the month of Megaten, because on Tuesdays there's the whole thing with 2000X with me and Akira, and for this season with you and me, we'll get to that. It is Tokyo Conception. Now, the reason why now this was something that I knew I was going to cover in the Valley of the Judge in some form, because one, it wouldn't be our first rodeo with Lion Wing, and two, this was something that I had been keeping an eye out for quite a while. Now, I will note a few things. One, there's some assessments within the community that I want to try and shoot down while I can. One of them is that it's somehow odd that this focuses on Nocturne instead of one of the more recent ones like 4 or 5. Well, this translation came, the game that this is translated from, the original Tokyo Conception, came out around the same time as Nocturne. And Nocturne coming around was a big deal because there hadn't been a mainline Shin Megami Tensei game in quite a while. I mean, there were the enhanced ports on the PlayStation, but as far as a full-on follow-up to 2, which the most common version of 2 was on the SNES and then later on the PlayStation. Nocturne was going to be a big deal.
Yep.
And of course, a big enough deal that we ended up getting it stateside, even though a vast majority of the Mega 10 universe was not translated. They felt confident enough to bring Nocturne stateside. I'd imagine the whole Dante from the Devil May Cry series, as much of a meme as that is, certainly helped. You know, the art trade that happened with Kazuma Kaneko, who, in the years since, he's kind of become he's kind of become in the same position in Mega 10 that, say, Toriyama is in Dragon Quest or Amano is in Final Fantasy. Of having that...
one of those representative artists.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would, as much as blasphemous as it is to some people, I would say the same thing regarding whoever handles the art for BattleTech post MechWarrior Online and the like. Because instead of just grabbing a bunch of designs from a bunch of anime, it feels like it's its own thing.
Yeah.
Now, I think some people had this idea that a Shin Megami Tensei RPG should have encompassed at least the mainline entries. The problem is that's such a wide berth, even between games, that was never gonna work.
Shin Megami Tensei is it's its own thing.
But most importantly, that idea of a one-size-fits-all design is not as much of a thing in the Japanese TTRPG space as we've talked about in the past.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the ones that we've covered together and I've covered by myself are laser focused on emulating a certain thing and nothing else.
Yeah.
Like, I know I brought up Sword World a bunch, and I'm pretty sure some people are sick of me bringing up Sword World, but I'll bring it up again. Sword World is not interested in being a one-size-fits-all kind of fantasy. It has a specific world, a specific tone in mind, and everything leads to that. When we covered Convictor Drive, we had talked about how calling it the Kamen Rider TTRPG is a little bit misleading.
It's got a lot more in common with just general transforming tokusatsu, and more specifically, there was even a lot of Iron Man influence with the way their suits worked.
Yeah. And I think I had also said that I got more of a Metal Heroes vibe, especially with the design of the Adept suit.
Yeah.
That was very much channeling Gavan.
Yeah. The point is that it was channeling a more generic version of Toku than just very specific to Kamen Rider.
I wouldn't even say generic, because it was explicitly leaning tech-based.
So, Metal Heroes, Super Sentai, stuff like that.
Metal Heroes and the tech-based Kamen Rider, like, say, Faiz, or... I might be stretching a little bit, but Kabuto. But Faiz is the most obvious.
And then because it is very team based, I kind of see Bokenger in there, because Bokenger was very techy.
Yeah, Bokenger I could see. Mega Ranger I could also see.
Go 5.
Yes. But the point is that, much like we've said in the past, it's focused on a particular angle instead of a one-size-fits-all approach.
Yeah.
It is a Lego playset. It is a highly customizable Lego playset.
Mm-hmm.
And Nocturne is no different. It is primarily built around the post-apocalyptic Tokyo that is the conception in Nocturne. Now, could somebody hack it and emulate some of the other entries, like 4 or 5? Yes, but that's a table decision.
Table decision, and it's going to take some late work on the part of the table.
Especially since you're probably going to have to make a whole bunch of new demons.
New demons, and you're probably also going to have to at least make some of the newer mechanics that were in those games introduced here to introduce them here.
Yeah.
It's gonna be a pain in the dick. To be honest.
Yeah. Now, obviously, we're going to be doing a fair bit of skimming because this thing is 309 pages in 2-column format.
Big.
Mm-hmm. The other thing is the fact that if we, especially with things like the Demon Compendium, if we were to go into each one individually, it would be very repetitive very quickly.
Yeah.
So we're not going to do that. But I will note a couple things. I appreciate that that we have a decent table of contents. We do have bookmarks. I do remember getting on Bradley's case about that because the first iteration of the PDF did not have bookmarks.
I still only have that first iteration. I need to download the new one. Is it in the Value folder?
I'll have to double check. If not, I'm probably going to update it after the show. And let me check all the way to the back. So let's see, credits, the sheets.
Now the one in the Valley folder is still the old one without bookmarks.
Yeah. So it has a section called index, but it's not a index. It's more of a appendix.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a thing. I mean, the only thing I could ask for more is hyperlinks, and that's I'm not going to lose sleep over that, since doing hyperlinks in PDF is still a relatively new thing.
Mm-hmm.
Plus, they were focused more on just getting the thing out there. So, with that said, we first go into the introduction with a new SMT arises, and I'll let you take that.
All right. Welcome to this world of chaos and rebirth. Welcome to the Vortex world. What you now hold is a copy of Shin Megami Tensei, the role-playing game Tokyo Conception, wherein you can play Atlus's 2003 Shin Megami Tensei 3 Nocturne video game, but as a TRPG. The Shin Megami Tensei TRPG series dates back to the mid-90s, but Tokyo Conception is the first time the series has ever left Japan. The Vortex world, where the story of the original game unfolded, was born after the Conception, an event devised by a man named Hikawa, a leader in the cult known as the Ring of Gaia. It is a world teeming with gods, fairies, and other creatures, all of them summoned or summarized with a single word: demon. Whether by chance, whether by destiny, whether desired or not, those who remained after the Conception were forced to fight for their lives. Some took in Magatama and became fiends. Others chose to cling to their humanity, remaining human. And some poor souls could not survive without borrowing from the strengths of demons. In this game, you'll take on the role of a human fiend or demon who wanders this Vortex world, and you'll be swept up into matters that could happen only in a place such as this. Behold the Vortex world, the egg of creation. Behold the war waged between the Assembly of Nihilo, and the Mantra Army. And know that to survive here, you will need to unravel its mysteries. It then goes into the normal, what is a tabletop RPG, which we're just going to jump past there.
Yep.
Goes into a game summary, where it talks about what characters, specifically player characters and such are, and the necessary items to play the game, such as the rules, dice, and writing tools. And then finally, at the end, it says, it has a good little guidance on what they think tabletop RPGs should be played like, which is, bear in mind the most important thing when it comes to playing a tabletop RPG, that above all else, you are there to have fun. Not only should you have fun, but everyone at the table should as well. Shed your passiveness, but likewise do not run wild over everyone else either. Seek to bring enjoyment to yourself and to all you are playing with. This will require you to have consideration for others, to pay attention, and to have at least a modicum of manners. Approach the game with this attitude in mind, and you should find no barrier to your enjoyment. I like that.
Yeah.
I like that it has attitude guidance, because sometimes people come to the table thinking it's a fucking competition, and that's only right if you're playing Paranoia.
In other words, don't be that guy. Of course, some other people
Exactly.
think that the table is somehow a therapy session, when it isn't. It is only that when you're actually working with a actual therapist.
Yes.
But then we get into the world of Nocturne. It goes a little bit into things. Before we dive into the particulars of the game, let us first turn to a brief review of the history of it. Shin Megami Tensei 3 Nocturne was, when it was released in 2003, the latest in Atlus's popular Shin Megami Tensei series, which had not seen a release for some 8 years. If I wanted to be pedantic, I could bring up what I brought before, that in those 8 years there were a bunch of re-releases or enhanced re-releases of previous entries.
Mm-hmm.
As well as side material like If. And the Devil Summoner games as well. It received such acclaim that in February of 2004, it was re-released in a new Maniacs version, which not only added a great deal of new story content, but also was in collaboration with the Devil May Cry series. Henceforth, we refer to these as the original game and Maniacs. I think in the EU version, what would become Maniacs got the name Lucifer's Call.
And I think the US only ever got the Maniacs version, didn't it?
Yeah.
Because I don't ever remember seeing a version of Nocturne without the whole "with Dante from the Devil May Cry" series on it.
And obviously subsequent re-releases of Nocturne have swapped out Dante for Raido Kuzunoha.
Which is fun.
Mm-hmm. Or the most recent one has both. And
both is good.
And of course, continuing the tradition of having previous protagonists as hidden bosses, and you getting your ass kicked by them.
Never let it be said Shin Megami Tensei is a easy set of games. It's almost as bullshit as Tri-Ace at some points.
Well, it is drawing upon the Wizardry games, and Wizardry has never been a very fair experience.
Who needs fairness when you're having fun? Isn't that what everybody says when they play like Dark Souls?
I would honestly go so far to say that Dark Souls is more fair than Wizardry can be.
Oh, it is, because you can very easily cheese the game. But this is a bit rails.
Mm-hmm. Anyway, Nocturne was set in the Vortex world, a place created on the inside of the sphere, which came to be after the old world was wiped away in the Conception, the Ring of Gaia's plan for renewing the world. The Ring of Gaia was a cult that believed in the teachings of the scriptures of Miroku, and from their ritual, the world was destroyed entirely save for small parts of the city of Tokyo, which remained as the egg of the new world. Said portions of Tokyo were rolled into a sphere, the center of which shined the argent light of Kagatsuchi.
Good old Kagutsuchi.
And Kagatsuchi obviously has its own presence in Shintoism, but when it comes to Megaten, that's a name that has been recurring since day one, since the original Digital Devil story stuff.
Yep.
Anyway, among the ruins of the human world, demons, creatures found previously only in the myths and legends of the old world, were born, who then proceeded to divide into factions and went to war to determine the shape of the world yet to be born from the egg. Hikawa, leader of the Ring of Gaia, established the Assembly of Nihilo and quickly gained dominance over the Vortex world. But he was not unopposed, for the Mantra army of Ikebukuro rose up to stand against him. The protagonist of the game's story was a normal high school student. Yet, thanks to his homeroom teacher, Takao Yuko, who was also priestess of the Ring of Gaia, he, by chance, lived to see the destruction of the world, became a fiend when made to ingest a Magatama, the essence of demonic power, and then became embroiled in the apocalyptic battle to decide what the new world would be. And I would like to point out how amusing it is that in doing the Magatama and the stuff that's been done since, it ended up undoing one of the big flaws with the protagonists in the previous Mega 10 games, which was putting points in intelligence was useless because the protagonist can't use magic.
Because they're not, yeah.
But
Yep.
But that's the problem that's been amended in the time since. I think even 4 had a protagonist that could use magic, although it's been a while since 4.
Yep.
Now, obviously, beyond that, it goes into what the Vortex world is, what demons are, Kagatsuchi, which acts as the sun, and is the game's equivalent to the usual moon phases in previous and following Mega 10 games. And
yeah.
with the wax and wane of it having a significant impact on strength of demons.
Yep.
And we have what Magatsuhi is, basically mana. The reason of Genesis, the Nihilo and Shijima sides of things. Reason was also referred to as Kotowari in the original game, but it is basically what sort of world that person wants to bring.
Yeah.
And it's another reincarnation of the order and chaos dichotomy that's been in the game since day one. And as I said on Tuesday, I think Mega 10 has a better understanding of alignments than the world's most litigious game does.
Mega 10 has a good understanding of alignment in the way it does, because it doesn't paint it as something so narrow. It's broad and sweeping. If you look at any of the Mega 10 games and you look under who's under each of the factions, sometimes you'd compare two of them and go, how are these two even on the same team? Well, it's because while their personal, morals and behaviors may clash, the overarching ideals they hold both fit under the umbrella of chaos or order.
Mm-hmm.
So they're on the same side, because ultimately, while their destination is the same, it is their means that are different.
Yeah. And you have those two sides, and usually the best ending in a lot of Mega 10 games is the neutral path.
It's the path where you give a middle finger to chaos, you give a middle finger to law, and you go, bring it, motherfuckers!
Mm-hmm.
And well, shit dies, and it's not you.
Yeah. Then we have the Mantra Army, which is all about strength. It is led by Gozu Tenno. Then we have go ahead.
I would like to point out that their two clashing ideals with Nihilo and Shijima. They want to create a world of perfect order where everything is unable to change. Everything is in stasis, essentially, or silence, as I believe it was in the game. Whereas the Mantra Army they want a world where the world of ultimate meritocracy, survival of the fittest, where only strength wins.
And then we have the whole concept of the Amala network, which is led by Musubi, and Musubi's reason is essentially secluding everyone in their own individual regions.
It is the ultimate AT fields for everybody, forever.
Mm-hmm.
So you have a guy who doesn't want to, who wants to freeze everything in place so that nothing can change, because if nothing changes, then everything remains in perfect order. You have a guy who wants to seclude everyone in their own bubble worlds because connections are icky and gross. And you have a guy who wants everybody to go into ultimate survival of the fittest. None of these are fucking good. Let's be honest.
And
all of these endings suck.
That's the other thing that made me bring up the fact that the Mega 10 games have a better understanding of alignments. Law and Chaos have massive fucking problems.
A world cannot grow, cannot breathe, cannot live without elements of numerous things within it.
Mm-hmm.
Law, chaos, all of it is necessary. The forces which represent each major ideal don't realize that by going to an extreme, you're going to break the world, or they don't care. I remember a lot of times you'd think that it would be the forces of chaos that don't care. No, it's usually the forces of law that are like, fuck the consequences of going to extreme law. Extreme law is going to happen, and you're going to fucking like it.
Mm-hmm.
I always found that fucking hilarious. It's like, oh, hypocrites, I love it. Of course, killing God is kind of a staple trope of Japan these days, I swear to God.
You know, I could, but no. But, you know, it's... My mind drifts back to Disco Elysium, where I remember getting the detective kind of ending, but the ending that I wanted to get, which should have been written in, and if I felt like modding it in, I would have, is saying, "Fuck all of y'all, I'm quitting the force. I'm retiring."
We love retirement.
Mm-hmm. You know, just because
Hydra does have a good point here. Love about Megaten saying "fuck both of you."
Yeah. Obviously, then it goes into Kagutsuchi and Reason. And then Magatama and Fiends. Fiends being people who have had Magatama, which are these mana-filled insects implanted in them, and become something that is neither human or demon. And I do remember when Devilman Crybaby came out, a lot of people were trying to make comparisons between that and Nocturne, and I'm like, I'm pretty sure inspiration goes both ways.
Well, okay, so first of all, Devilman Crybaby is just a stylized retelling of the original Devilman. And the original Devilman predates SMT by how many years?
A lot. But you know how it is. Anytime somebody uses the term ripoff, I refuse to take them seriously, because it is always surface
a bad faith
level.
argument. Yeah, it's surface level, and it's a bad faith argument. It's like, okay, so here's the thing. First of all, Devilman's been around for a lot longer. Second of all, people can draw inspiration from many different things. Devilman may likely be one of them. But saying that then Devilman Crybaby took inspiration from SMT, I mean, I could see it for some art direction and such. I could definitely see that. But the actual story and all the concepts, those have existed for years.
Mm-hmm.
This is just a stylized retelling. Now that irks me just a little bit.
And if I'm being honest, I think a lot of people who use the term ripoff or heartbreaker or the like have no understanding of the creative process.
Yeah.
But I
think the important thing to determine about Fiends is that they cannot go back to being human. That's an important thing to point out.
Mm-hmm.
Once you have a Magatama, once you've eaten that bug, you cannot uneat the bug.
Yeah, and I think the idea with Fiends is having the body of a demon, but still having a technically human soul.
And being able to have all the strengths and weaknesses that comes with being from two worlds.
Mm-hmm.
Man, some of the conflicts that the MCs of the SMT series go through, especially the Fiends, really do deal with what am I and what does it mean to be what I am.
And
which is nice. I like that. Good storytelling. You
kind of had the seeds of that planted in the first 2 games.
Yeah.
Like the original, you were just a person in the wrong place at the wrong time. As everything went to shit and then worse. Obviously, I'm not counting Digital Devil's story with this because that's a whole other case. The protagonist in those novels really got screwed over.
I don't want to be depressed right now, Monk. I'm not going to recount that in my brain. Thank you.
Look, the 3rd novel never happened. I'll put it that way.
I don't know what you're talking about.
And
I don't know what you're talking about.
When it comes to SMT 2, I know this will count as a spoiler, but statute of limitations has long since passed. The big thing is you being essentially an attempt to create a savior artificially.
You know, I do have to say this about creating a savior in general. Saviors are not made in that way. Saviors are made by circumstance. A savior arises when somebody finally has the balls to do what needs to be done to save. So, artificially creating a savior is exceptionally misguided.
And of course,
but it still kind of worked.
Yeah, just not in the way that the people who made it hoped. I'm not going to go into any further detail for those who haven't gone into SMT2, which I do recommend, even with some of the wonkiness of combat balancing. Although it could be worse. You could have the combat balancing of the first game where Zio was fucking broken. Like any Zio series spell was broken.
I'm sorry. Divine Lightning says what?
Yeah. So after that, they go into an introductory replay. We're not going to be reading this off, but one concept that's brought up that I do like, and this is something that's going to repeat later on, is the idea of trailers.
I'll take the trailer, Monk. It's like being at the bottom of the ocean. The underground waterway might be cavernous, with a ceiling over 10 meters high, but such is necessary for the giant multi-meter-wide wingspan manta ray creature that swims there. That would be Fornius. If we don't take that guy out, no way we're ever seeing the light again. What else is there to do but fight?
Mm-hmm. And obviously it goes into the scenario. And that's, for those who aren't as familiar, that's another thing that you're going to get used to hearing a lot when it comes to Japanese tabletop, is building around scenarios rather than lengthy campaigns. That's not to say you can't do lengthy campaigns with them. I mean, we did it. But there's very much a skewing towards those one-shots or episodic types of play.
I didn't know Akira was in this game. One of the characters in this replay is named Mr. Hiho.
Oh, I'll get to that.
Oh, I know. I didn't know Akira was in this game.
After that is the terms, basically the lexicon section that you would see in a lot of White Wolf games. As well as a subsection for it solely for character sheet terms, which I appreciate.
That's actually quite nice, yes. Mm-hmm. Most of the terms that you see in this glossary are fairly common. I mean, there's things that are specific to the system, such as the word subclass, but, subclass is kind of what it says on the tin. It has a definition for explode, as in exploding dice. Mm-hmm. And, of course, the character sheet terms show you basically everything you'd ever need to know. Most of these terms you can get just from hearing them, but still, having this here for people who are new to Mega 10 or people who are new to TTRPGs, fantastic.
Yeah.
Just the best.
But then we get into character creation proper. Starting with just a bit of a description of player characters, and then the recommended level. The level range, much like the video game, is levels 1 to 100. Though they recommend you set characters no lower than 5 and no higher than 70.
As it provides the most stable, playable experience. I'm glad that it can accommodate all those levels, but that they also have a recommended level range.
And once again, I'm reminded about how in Sword World, most of the sample characters that you see are going to be Adventure Level 2. Very rarely is there going to be one of Adventure Level 1, because that's unless you're just putting one level in a bunch of classes, that's usually a bad idea.
Yeah. I mean, hell, with my friends who want me to run a real-life game of ours, I plan on starting them at APL 3, just because I want them to have their full kit and some stuff to play with.
But the first method, and this is another thing that's a hallmark of Japanese tabletop, is the quick start method of character creation, which is basically just choose one of the pre-gens. But one of the big points, even after you pick the pre-gen, is the bond table. Basically, you look at the bond table, which you can see on screen, and roll 1d10 and choose a PC's bond with the next PC in line. This is not far removed from the PC relationship mini chart that you see in, say, the Cypher system. Yeah.
Or how you set up relationships with other PCs in Tenra. Ironic that well, not ironic. It kind of follows, considering Tenra is another Japanese-grown tabletop.
Yeah, I will say the relationship system in Tenra is a little bit more complex.
It's a little more complex because it deals with your karma, which is an entirely different thing. If you guys want to know more about that, go look at his review of Tenra.
But old-ass review I did nearly a decade ago.
Are you saying it's time for us to play it on on Cloister at some point?
That is a distinct possibility.
Of a definite maybe?
But right after that, we have a collection of sample characters, and I think most of these are level 10.
Yes. They start with 1100 experience, which means fiends are at 10, humans are at 11, and demons at 9. Like, we have a few people who the first 2 or 3 are fiends, and then we actually have series staple demons such as Pixie and, Jack Frost and the Hellhound. And then we have, I think, 4 humans? Or no, 2 humans, excuse me.
And I do find it amusing that the first fiend we see, Marogare, was given his Magatama by a strange blonde-haired boy. Those of you who know who that is.
You might as well tell them, Monk, because those who don't know are more likely to be here.
It's Lucifer.
Yes, I know. I know. I'm joking.
There are 3 demons who... I know that Jack Frost is one of the mascots, but there are 3 demons who could be considered story mascots throughout the franchise. Lucifer is one of them, and to a certain extent, I'd say Set as well. Like, you usually see them as the shit goes down bosses. Loki, because he was the one involved in the original story. And Cerberus, who is always best boy, and can really, really help you out in a pinch when he's in your party.
The only other series staple demon that I can think of as a joke mascot is Chariot. I mean, Mara. I was just going to call him Chariot Dick because that's what he is. But yes, the there are many forms Lucifer has actually taken, like you said, the blonde child, or again the old gentleman in a wheelchair, both from Nocturne.
Mm-hmm.
But there are other forms that Lucifer has taken in numerous games. Such as the quote-unquote blonde young man in the Rido spinoff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Also, for anyone who is interested in Shin Megami Tensei, I'm actually going to send you this link because I just want you to scroll the table of contents in front of them.
Mm-hmm.
The Lucifer entry on the Shin Megami Tensei wiki. Because the table of contents under profile, you can go down. Do you want to know how many entries there are, people?
A lot.
37!
In a row?
Yes, thank you. But I'm not kidding. There are 37 profile entries from various games.
Yeah.
From Digital Devil Story 3 to the actual original Megami Tensei 1 and 2, down to the last Bible series, Majin Tensei, even Persona.
Mm-hmm.
And of course the Persona Q games. Devil Survivor and Devil Children. It is everywhere. He's one of, like we pointed out, one of the series staple demons. But Megami Tensei and Shin Megami Tensei have exceptionally long history. So having that little nod is definitely it's to get that little that inner part of you that goes, oh, I get that reference.
Yeah. And Hydra says, not to get sidetracked, but Mildred, could you give a TLDR version of your opinion of Cypher? Still new to the monastery. I really like the Cypher system. I've stand Numenera and the Strange since day one.
Yep. And Invisible Sun. Oh, yeah. Invisible Sun.
The Invisible Sun is absolutely nuts, and I look forward to the day where we crack that open in detail.
I want to play it on Cloister.
Mm-hmm. And I will admit that as what the original Numenera had some issues when it came to pool taxing, but the Discovery version, which was its way of catching up to what the Cypher system had become when it went more universal, is a marked improvement. There's no shortage of great material throughout the Cypher universe, whether it be the weirdness of Numenera, the dimension hoppingness of the Strange, or the epic fantasy of things like Gods of the Fall. There's something in there for just about everybody. There's even a pretty good Star Trek Cypher setup that was used, and at one point I was considering using Cypher system for adapting a Destiny TTRPG, but then I read Brer Eto's work, even though he's kind of stopped development because the announcement of a 5e take on Destiny disheartened him. I still enjoy what he came up with. Using the fudge dice, but not necessarily being a fudge game. Point is, Cypher is a unique beast. It is definitely one for those who like a crunch medium affair, but it is heavily leaning towards a more exploratory experience rather than a combative one. It's not to say you can't do combat in it. It's just exploration has always been a bigger focus.
Yeah, Monty Cook really made something special with Cypher. I kind of wonder if you could develop something Megami Tensei related in Cypher. You definitely couldn't do the whole. You could. There'd definitely be a way to do the demon negotiations.
I think you could, but it's one of those things where I'd have to spend a couple weekends with a big keg of beer as I force my way through it.
Think it would be better suited to a spin-off, something like Persona or Devil Survivor?
Truth be told, the Mega 10 game that I would probably use for Cypher, it's probably Last Bible.
I could see that. Oh, that's definitely good.
Go with something simple and then eventually build upwards.
That's cool. That's cool. Okay, that now you've got my brain a rumbling there, Monk.
Yeah. I mean, I don't have any plans to do it anytime soon, but it's certainly something that can happen. But
now, I would like to point out that all of the fiends here, I think every fiend in the series has been represented with some sort of those tattoos ever since the Demi Fiend, hasn't it?
Let's see. Margaret has it. Shiranui has it.
Onk has it on his face or her face,
and I think that's just the standard.
And her legs.
Just the standardized way that they're showing if somebody is a fiend.
Well, and because isn't the main character in 5 a fiend as well? Technically, they have a Magatama, don't they?
I think it's a different rule set when it comes to 5. From what I've seen, I still haven't played 5 yet.
Well, I mean, pretty sure that they're not a fiend in the same sense. They don't.
It wasn't through a Magatama, but through fusion with a god, or
a demon god.
Yeah,
but is still a god. Yes. I would still technically consider them a fiend under that particular ideal, but not the same way that fiends are in the universe.
Yeah. Now, something that you'll note when it comes to these sheets is that the TN has percentiles. And yes, this is a percentile-based game. Once again, those familiar with TTRPGs in Japan will know that the most popular non-Japanese tabletop is Call of Cthulhu, and by extension, much of basic role-playing, to the point where there are Japan-exclusive modules and the like for Call of Cthulhu. A small handful of them have been translated, but there's a lot of material to go by when you're dealing with Call of Cthulhu. And but I've mentioned this before, but there's also a dedicated fan base for Earth Dawn, oddly enough. It's probably due to the fact that Group SNE had a working relationship with FASA.
Yeah.
And Earth Dawn is still in their umbrella. That's also how Shadowrun got to Japan, was through that working relationship. I've seen screens of the Shadowrun game that was exclusive to Japan for the Sega CD. It's interesting. Also provides more ammo for my arguments regarding the JRPG fallacy, but that's something I've covered. But getting back to the sample characters, we have Pixie, Pixie is usually one of the first demons that you get.
Yeah, it's your introduction. Pixie's usually your introduction to demonic bartering.
Mm-hmm. And I see what Don Munn is saying. As a longtime fan of both Mildra's various TTRPG reviews and of SMT, I'm genuinely glad you're finally covering Tokyo Conception's character creation rules. I had it planned that I was going to cover this months ago. Like, as soon as I knew that this was a thing, I was like, this is gonna get in the temple at some point. It says, to be fair, though, you do bring up a point that Atlas, and by extension, Shin Megami Tensei, seems to have a better understanding of how alignments work compared to recent takes on D&D. This is my whole thing of, oh, it understands alignment better. That is not a recent problem. I've talked about this elsewhere, but the problem is twofold. One, how strict alignment became over the years, and also that alignment morphed into a morality system when it was never really designed to be that.
Yeah, as we've discussed before, and I'll just keep it short, their alignment system was originally the attitudes of the gods towards you.
Especially since it was drawing upon the Moorcock books, especially the Eternal Champion series, and especially Elric. This is the fact that Call of Cthulhu is so popular in Japan compared to D&D that most tabletop RPGs tend to favor D6 or D10 based one-shot focused rule sets. That's not exactly why.
Call of Cthulhu is probably more popular because they were more willing to work with Japanese companies. When we talked about Sword World a while back, we talked about how the entire reason Sword World became its own thing was because TSR was no longer willing, or was just very, very late in responding to Group SNE. And so instead of them developing like the rule sets for D&D into Japanese, they just basically started developing their own system.
D&D was being translated into Japanese, but it was a long and expensive process. And by the time AD&D finally got translated into Japanese, other games within that fantasy niche had come along and kind of stolen their thunder, especially Tunnels and Trolls. Which was an easier game to handle because it was a lighter book. It wasn't necessarily requiring miniatures, and it used D6s. With Sword,
it's insanely easy to get a hold of in Japan,
especially in rural Japan.
Yeah,
because dice games were already a thing for hundreds of years by that point.
Exactly.
Obviously, that's not as much of a problem nowadays, and that's why we were surprised when we covered Convictor Drive, which isn't using D6s.
It used D10s. But the biggest thing that is that when it comes to what's going on with Japanese TTRPGs and any Western stuff that comes over, it really has to do with that early setup. But that's also a much lengthier discussion for a different video.
We may end up doing a full stream just talking about that kind of thing. But one of the other big things, and that I'd say this is one of the biggest differences between how TTRPGs evolved in Japan versus how they evolved in the States or in Europe, was that it did not evolve from miniature wargaming. Everybody knows the story. D&D was a successor to Chainmail. Chainmail was a successor was built on the back of the wargaming scene of the 70s, especially in the Midwest. That story's been well told. Everybody's seen the Blackmore documentary, yada yada yada. That didn't happen in Japan. The first Japanese-made TTRPG was Wizardry in the late 80s. I think it was 1988. Which was obviously an adaptation of the PC game. I've seen some people use that to say, see, it was drawing upon D&D like everybody else. Not necessarily. Wizardry was drawing upon D&D, yes, but that's where that association begins and ends. D&D has not had a major foothold in Japan since the 80s. And a lot of that foothold was with the original versions, like say the Beckme, like say the Beckme era. In fact, I remember the big thing that I've had access to when it comes to Japanese Japanese D&D was the rules cyclopedia that I've talked about in the past. You know, the one that is completely different than the one that was in the States.
Yeah.
And I used in my argument regarding my problems with the term JRPG.
Yeah.
But
Don, this is a very interesting discussion. We very much appreciate it.
Yeah.
We are going to move forward though, so that we can continue to review Tokyo Conception. This might be something we bring up in a Geek Watch or something later down the line, though. It's always a topic that's very fun to talk about.
I do find it amusing that the Jack Frost we have in the pre-gens idolizes Thor.
That's his contact as well, yeah.
Let's see, his contact. His goal is to become a powerful hero.
I didn't know Akira was in this game.
And is this a bad time to point out that on the character sheet there is a he-ho alignment?
I'm more worried about you than me. I find this all amazing.
But let's see, then we have Hellhound, of course, and then we have the humans. We have the soldier and the reporter. And then we get to the full scratch version, the full character creation, which is on a 7-step process. Step 0, or actually 8 steps if you count the 0, which is GM's recommendations. Basically the session 0 stuff, or the stuff that I always put in the primers whenever I run games for the Cloister. This usually has, for context, whenever I'm doing a full season for the Cloister of the Dice, I will put in a brief primer about the tone, what to expect, and what's on and off the table. For example, I might have a rule that this campaign is human only. You cannot pick non-humans.
Yep.
And while I'm willing to negotiate on some terms, in some cases it's an instance of no. So in that no human thing is, you can't say, I'm a mutant. I said, no. Human only. This is not up for debate.
This is not a negotiation. This is a dictation.
This is not a democracy. This is a dictatorship. I am the law. My voice isn't gravelly enough to do Dread.
I am the law! Because he sounds like he's throwing it up.
I was hoping you'd go for Carl Urban instead of Stallone, but...
I mean, I wanted to do the meme, though.
Fair. But then you decide your class. There's only 3 of them: human, demon, and fiend. Although calling it a class is a little bit generous, it's really more of an archetype from what we've seen. Then you select additional skills. We will get to that. You have your starter skills from your class, and then you get extra skills, which we'll get into in a bit. Then you pick your background. Looking at the backgrounds table, select 2 backgrounds, either by choosing them directly or rolling randomly. Then you select contact, which can be provided via your backgrounds, but each player character should have 2, so you may need to determine one or both on the contact table. Then you have to pick a goal. I do hope that there's some example goals outside of the ones we saw in the pre-gens, because that's one of those blank check designs we've talked about.
Well, and then if we actually read this section, each PC may decide what their goal is freely, but the GM may also offer guidance or suggestions after the trailer for the scenario is produced, so that goals can align with the direction of the story.
It's an effective way to kill off the Nenad.
Yeah.
Uh, Nenad, for those unfamiliar, is neutral, evil, ninja, assassin, drow. And is a effective shorthand for what not to do with characterization as a PC. Obviously, step 6 is set name and personal info, and then finally determine bonds with other PCs.
Yeah. Using the previously seen bond table.
Mm-hmm. Now, then it goes into class, the most important choice. First thing to note is fiends choose a Magatama, which will set their starter skills and level 1 stats. Fiends cannot hold on to gear, nor can they use armor or weapons. Demons choose a demon to embody that is a level equal to or lower than the recommended level, and then do level ups until they reach the recommended level. Humans choose a subclass, which is loosely based on several real-life professions. This provides them with their stats at level 1, starter skills, and equipment. Then we have leveling prior to the game. This is to add a degree of flexibility so that you can have a setup catch up to whatever the recommended level is for that scenario.
And you are correct, Don. Human characters do level up quicker compared to fiends and demon PCs. As stated earlier, with the sample characters, they all have 1100 experience, but that results in a level 9 demon, a level 10 fiend, and a level 11 human. That, and they use guns. Yeah, they're the only ones that can really use that type of equipment, I think.
Mm-hmm. But then we have increasing stats. For each level above the first, you gain 1 point to increase your stats. Fiends and humans can apply this point to any stat they prefer. Demons have to apply it randomly.
And it's a D10 table. You can see it on the screen.
Mm-hmm.
And that indicates that favorite stats are indicated with an asterisk mark next to the stat.
Yep. And of course, acquiring skills. You learn all skills from your class choice up to the level you'll be starting at. You also learn 1 extra skill at level 1, 10, 20, and every 10 levels beyond that from the extra skills table. Keep in mind that one character can only ever have a maximum of 8 skills learned at one time. Should you learn another skill in excess of 8, you must select one of the skills to forget. Longtime Pokemon fans should be well familiar with this concept.
I'm an SMT fan, should be well familiar with parts of that concept.
Yep. When selecting a skill from the extra skills table, you may either roll the dice to determine if it or choose whichever you like. Every character can learn new skills when they level up. These skills are learned at certain levels and are set according to class choice.
Gesundheit. Gesundheit again.
For fiends, it depends on Magatama. For humans, their subclass, and for demons, the demon they have embodied. At level up, you choose 1 new skill to learn from those you're eligible for. You cannot choose a skill that you've already learned. Even if a fiend has multiple Magatama ingested, they still can only learn 1 skill per level up.
And of course, we have an extra skills table that shows you where you get your extra skills.
Mm-hmm.
And you choose one of either in the row.
Yep. Then we have fusion and evolving. In a campaign, if demons reach a sufficiently high level, they can benefit from a unique sort of advancement in the form of fusion and evolving. However, if these systems are allowed prior to the start of a new game, the player may find themselves mired in a rather complex puzzle. As such, fusing and evolving before a new game should generally not be permitted. However, if the game's recommended level is 10 or higher, the GM may permit these systems with limitations. For example, only allowing evolving or only allowing 1 single fusion with the player's choice of element or Mitama. In the latter case, we recommend you only do this in a game with a recommended level of 20 or higher. Then, semi-quick start. When the recommended level is 11 through 20, you can still choose one of the sample characters, but level them up as appropriate. If you're doing levels in multiples of 10 rather than 10 higher than the sample characters, you can speed up the level process by doing the following. For every 10 levels, give +1 to all stats, +3 to your higher stat, and spend the last 2 points as you like. Gain 1 extra skill. This may be learned regardless of your class. So if you really want to bump... The semi-quick start I look as a way to speed up the process if you're bumping up by a lot more levels.
Yeah.
And as far as fusion and evolving, we're not going to be getting into detail on that yet. That's going to be for later in this series.
Yep. That won't be for quite a few weeks, or at least this week and next week.
Yeah.
I think it's our 3rd episode, isn't it?
So then calculating other stats. First stat TNs. The TN for each stat is stat times 5 plus level plus modifiers. Derived TNs are things like dodge, which is agility plus 10, and then that becomes a percent. Negotiation TN is twice your luck stat plus 20. Interesting that negotiation is luck instead in this case.
I mean, considering that the other stats are mostly related to combat, I guess that fits.
Yeah. HP is vitality plus level times HP multiplier, which the multiplier is determined by your class. Fiends and demons having 6, humans only having 4, though passive skills like life bonus, life gain, and life surge can change that. MP is self-explanatory. It's your magic stat plus level times MP multiplier. I note that it says modifier and multiplier. I hope that's probably just a little typo. Fiends and demons have a multiplier of 3, humans only 2. Though the mana bonus, mana gain, and mana surge passive skills can change that. Then we have base power, the minimum floor to your power when dealing damage, and is in either physical or magical power. Physical power is strength plus level. Magical power is magic plus level. Then we have resistance, which is vitality plus... So physical resistance is vitality plus level divided by 2. Magical resistance is magic plus level divided by 2. Pretty self-explanatory in what resistance is going to be. That's basically your defense. Then we have fate. Fate points are spendable currency you can use to support your character performing heroic actions or to help you manage damage. This number represents your maximum fate points. You gain fate points up to your maximum at the start of the session. Most characters have 5 fate points, but you can increase the number per 5 luck you have. Fate, I would say, is this game's extra effort mechanic. We'll get into that in the future. Then the starting Maka, which is level times 50. Obviously, Maka is the currency.
It is money.
Yep. And then we have a chart regarding the reason.
Charts.
Yeah, a couple charts for reasons. One for becoming a fiend. One for being spared, i.e., how'd you survive the conception. One is your reason to act. One is your extra contact table.
And I'd like to point out that Loki is on there.
Yep.
I'd also like to point out that both a Jack Frost and a Jack-o'-lantern are on there.
Yep. Yep, Mr. Hee-Ho. A Jack Frost who's on a journey to become the strongest demon. Oh.
Yep.
But... let's see. After that...
We get we get some advanced breakdowns of these classes,
Mm-hmm.
which
Starting with the Fiend.
yeah.
Which we've already described what the Fiend is, but its starting stats is Strength 2, Magic is basically 2s across the board. Its starting equipment is 1 Magatama from one of the ones from the starter list. Its HP and MP multiplier we've already gone into. As far as its starting skill, it starts with the Scout, which is a talk skill. This is how you can gather info or begin negotiation. Negotiation we won't be covering tonight.
Yeah.
Dun says, so there's a chance to roll for both Jack Frost and Pyrojack/Jack-O-Lantern as potential contacts. I'm surprised Pixie wasn't one of them.
Elite Pixie was.
Yeah.
The 10 contacts on the extra contact table are Tornius, Decarabia, Loki, Thor, the Lady of the Fountain, Mr. Hee-Ho, Warden Jack-O-Lantern, Eligor, Elite Pixie, and the Junk Collector.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not base Pixie, it's an Elite Pixie.
Yep.
But with the 8 starter Magatama that you can choose from,
Mm-hmm.
You can start with the original physical attack Magatama from Nocturne Marokare. But then you also have Wadatsumi, which is ice, Ankh, which is recovery, Iomante, which is debuffs, Shiranui, which is fire, Kifumi, which is force, Narukami, which is electric. That fits, Monk. For those who don't understand why that fits, Persona 4's main character official name is Yu Narukami, and the first persona he starts with is Izanagi, who has a lot of Zio.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have Kamudo, which is martial skills.
Yep.
But then it also talks about advanced Magatama, which can be dropped by demons, purchased at the junk shop, or only earned in unique ways. And they can only be acquired after character creation, such as Anathema being dark, Miasma being an advanced ice element.
Mm-hmm.
Nirvana is light, Murakumo is another strong physical Magatama, Geis, which is another recovery Magatama, Jed, which is buffs, Muspel, which is debuffs. Well, status ailments, really. Gehenna, which is another fire. Kamurogi, which is another martial. Satan, which I don't think I need to go further than Satan.
Mm-hmm.
Adama is more electric. Vimana is another martial. Gundari is force. Sophia is more recovery. Gaia is, well, the Magatama representing Mantram Army's absolute belief in strength overall. Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Kailash, which gives you Megiddo. And then it mentions legendary Magatama. Beyond the 24 Magatama listed here, there exists another legendary Magatama that can only be obtained once all the rest have been gathered. It is called Masakados, and it is held by an ancient specter known as Masakado. The one who possesses the Magatama will gain unlimited power in the form of having a null affinity to all elements besides Almighty. Jesus, what? Man, imagine someone playing a campaign just to collect all 24 Magatama, Monk.
Yeah. And the thing is, you can have up to 3 ingested, but you can only get the benefits of 1.
Well, and then if you look at Jesus.
So I'm gonna switch to single page for what we're going over next. And
the character creation table.
Yeah, and going to try and rotate. So that you guys can see this. So we have a chart of the stats of each Magatama.
And, Masakados gives you plus 10 in everything but luck.
Mm-hmm.
That's freaking insane.
Yep. How you acquire them. Then
and what skills they give.
What skills they give you and at what level.
Yep. Whereas as Masakados shows, you get all of its stuff at level 1.
Mm-hmm.
That's insane.
But then we have the demon class. So you can play as a demon. They need 1.3 times as much experience to level up as a fiend, but they can also, through the fusion and evolve systems, change into more advanced demons. When demons level up, their stat growth occurs randomly as well. Lastly, demons cannot use weapons, armor, or items.
Yep.
And you can evolve at certain levels. You can also fuse. Again, these are things we'll get to down the road. Is it possible to roll randomly for each stat, or is it more of a point-buy system? Or is it based mostly on which class archetype you start with? Option 3, it seems to be the approach we're going with. See, then Demon PC creation, which is what we're getting into here. Then we have optional level exceptions. When starting PCs from level 1 to level 5, there are a few appropriate beginner demons to select. As such, the following optional rule may be used depending on the starting level, basically easing level restrictions. Should the recommended level put fiends at 5 or lower, the same level limitation should be relaxed for demons, allowing them to pick any of the following adjusted to the recommended level. That being Fairy Pixie, Jirai Kodama, Jirai Huapo, and Brute Shikigami. And then we have a handful of demon entries. And with each of these starter demons that it shows, the stats are set, and as you level up them up randomly.
And then I do want to point out that a question that was asked earlier is answered here. There are little stat blocks shown. For example, Pixie says when level 6 or higher, if the party is level 10 or higher, they can evolve to High Pixie.
Mm-hmm.
So evolution and fusion can occur on the player character level. There's a specific path you have to follow, and there are specific prerequisites.
It also notes what skills you get at certain levels. I think that balances out why you have to get more XP, because you're getting skills a lot faster than say fiends.
Well, and not only that, but even with the whole randomized stat gains, you have up to 3 favored stats. Up to 3.
Mm-hmm.
We only see 1 on these particular stat blocks. But I figured there'd be up to 3 because, well, there are 3 slots for it. Otherwise, you'd be like half of the level up table for a demon is randomly goes to strength versus luck on 1 through 5. The other half is favored stat, or 9 and 10 are choose any stat you want.
Mm-hmm. Like for example,
so there's
the favorite stat for the Mini Frost is magic.
Yep. Well, that's because it's going to be using a lot of fucking ice magic.
Mm-hmm.
While learning to say hee-ho with baby steps.
Yeah. Some of the demons get more skills than others, but they are getting skills far more easily. Then we have humans. They start with 3 skills. Lucky Find. At the end of combat, you can make a check to find items using luck. Luck Smiles. Once per scenario, you can nullify the effects of an attack on yourself. And the Scout skill.
Yep. They also get to choose their subclass. Human-only gear, guns. When firing a gun, use agility for the check and power, and also expend 1 bullet per 1 attack. And so gun damage is gear power plus agility plus 1d10. Do not add your level to gun damage.
Mm-hmm.
Humans only require about 80% of the experience required that fiends need to level up. And of course, a human can always choose to become a fiend.
Yep.
Or they can fuse themselves with a demon to become a demon. So humans have the option to, at any point in time, should the opportunity present itself, no longer be human. But I think that the big thing here is that humans, since they aren't demonic in any way, are immune to light affinity. They always possess null light.
And then we have the subclasses. The Potential, the Reporter, the Brawler, the Swordsman. Although it notes Swordsman could cover any martial artist devoted to a weapon.
Yeah. It also notes that Reporter starts...
You cut out.
I...
And you cut out again. Zan, you there?
I'm...
Like, I hear you for a second and then I don't. Testing, testing, 1, 2. Can you hear us? Apologies, folks. I think Zan's having technical difficulties. Zan, you there?
I'm here.
Alright. It was doing this weird cutting in and out. I wasn't sure if it was on your end or if it was Discord fucking
It's
up.
a Discord thing.
Yeah. Anyway.
It's a Discord thing because my speeds are fine. And so is my packet.
But then we have...
But what I said was that Reporter notes that it gets an extra contact.
Mm-hmm. Let's see. Soldier starts with a gun and body armor. We also have Maiden, which can learn recovery and healing magic. Somebody forgot the space between that and Sorcerer. Which can learn attack spells. Then we have Mannequin, an artificial humanoid condemned to forced labor throughout the Vortex world. Being similar to humans, they earn the name Mannequin. Though Mannequin are created as disposable objects from the mud of the river flowing through Asakusa. For some reason, the PC's Mannequin possesses memories of a former life in the old human world. In truth, mannequins are not humans, but demons. As such, in addition to the rules for humans, they have the following restrictions. Cannot use Magatama. May become a different demon through manifestation. Cannot be used as ingredients for a fusion. In addition to null light, they can gain null dark, but lose both if they ever stop being a mannequin. When the party is level 60 or higher, if their evil tendency is strong, they can evolve to Sakahagi.
Fun.
Then it shows...
Then we have...
Oh, go ahead. I think Discord's fucking with him again.
Kind.
You said, can I? And then nothing.
Hold on.
Holding on.
A millisecond ping.
Sounds like you're back.
Yeah, but I keep getting spikes of 5-second ping on Discord, so if it happens again, just keep going without me.
Duly noted. But much like with demons, the subclass operates in a similar way of your starting stat block items that you get, as well as skill acquisitions, and all of them get some degree of skill acquisitions. Some of them just getting it at earlier levels.
Yeah.
Huh. And then we have character advancement. Every demon defeated grants XP. All characters who participate in the combat, even if they are dead at the end of it, gain this XP. Note, when the demon defeated is 10 or more levels higher than the party, for each 10 full levels above the party level the demon is, double the gained XP. And extra EXP is gained when the scenario is over. This is based on the party level times 10. And the XP needed to level is the level cubed.
Makes it easy to level up from level 2, but hard to level up from level 50.
Yep.
They also have charts for this.
Yep. One for Fiend, one for Demon, one for Human. And the benefits of leveling. Obviously, every time you level up, you can add 1 point to your stats. Stats cap at 40. Demons have to roll theirs at random. Humans and Fiends can apply that to any stat of their choice. There's also skill acquisition, which we've covered before. When you level up, you immediately heal to your maximum HP and MP. And every character can learn one skill from the extra skills table on page 35 at level 1, in addition to those granted by class or subclass. Additionally, at each 10th level, you can gain an additional extra skill in the same way.
Yep. But never over your 8 skill slots.
Mm-hmm. EXP can only be accumulated. Your total amount never goes down. Fuck you, Loa. No, I'm not salty about
There's only
Loa's.
one way it does, and that's during a... Yeah.
Yeah, I'm still salty about Loa in early games that could do permanent level downs on you. Same with vampires.
Yeah.
And obviously, when it comes to the whole your level can't go down, your total amount of XP can't go down, demons are the sole exception through how fusion is going to work. But again, we'll get to that later. And the level goes all the way up to 100, which, if you're a Fiend, you need 1 million XP to get to that point. If you're a Demon, you need 1.3 million, and if you're a Human, you only need 800,000. I do like that the experience points set up here is the cumulative experience instead of saying, oh, between levels you need this amount, which just makes things more complicated if you're doing multiple level ups.
Yep.
But that more or less covers full character creation. And I'd say this is definitely being true to form when it comes to its source material. I'd say the only thing in this that isn't in the video game is the fate part, which we'll end up covering later. But I have seen some say that there's not enough there for humans at higher levels, and I do know on the Lion Wing Discord somebody house ruled sword fusion.
Yeah.
And I could certainly see that to a point, because once you get into the 20s, you're not getting as much in the way of skills.
Mm.
But I think it's one of those things that's ultimately going to be dependent on how effective the gear is when we get to that. Since there were certain firearms in like Megaten 1 and 2 that could be considerably OP. And while I was going through this, I came to a realization. It wouldn't take too much for me to house rule an avatar tuner into this system.
Yeah.
In fact, that would be an interesting challenge, since the tuners in Digital Devil Saga had a human and a demon form, and Digital Devil Saga 2 a berserk form when the solar data is capped out. Or the highest moon phase, if you want to be pedantically traditional.
Mm-hmm.
But with this setup, I'd say the big thing is that one can get into the character creation process very quickly.
Yes, it's super straightforward.
Mm-hmm. So because of that, if somebody needs to fill in, that can happen. And it also means that even if you're not using the pre-gens, they can provide a decent baseline for you. I could see some argue that customization is kind of bottlenecked, but I would argue it's only bottlenecked to a point, and even with that, there's usually some sort of trade-off. The trade-off that fiends and demons have as opposed to humans is versatility. Especially demons. Given the whole fusion and evolution thing, fiends have that with the Magatama. Humans don't have as much, but having gear can be a significant thing. And true to form, it does mean that for humans the magic stat is going to be useless
unless you play sorcerer.
Mm-hmm. I feel like sorcerer is there so that you can have the magic stat be useful, because that's been a problem in a lot of Mega 10 games.
Well, I feel like with the Mega 10 games, having that issue with normal humans didn't make sense, because in a world where those beings, the demons, etc., actually exist, things like Onmyodo and other esoteric sorceries would definitely start working. So practitioners of such would definitely be able to do magic.
I could see it working. I could see the whole you can't use magic in the first SMT.
Yeah.
Everyone after that, I'm a little less inclined, because 2 takes place a long time after the original, to the point where the Millennium Kingdom is its own thing. Tokyo Millennium specifically, and you're a gladiator in that thing.
Yeah.
Obviously 3, this isn't an issue. 4, and it's not an issue for 4 and 5. The reason I say I could kind of see it in the original is because you're just a random high schooler who happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time.
Yep.
And you already are doing esoteric stuff because of the whole thing with the comp and the demon summoning program that Steven makes. And I know some have said it's kind of weird that somebody would write a program that could summon demons. I can actually see the logic in it. You know, basically using a computer to expedite the process.
Mm-hmm.
Don says, I can validate it so long as A, if it starts out in an ordinary world before the post-apocalypse, and B, it's something that's hard to control for normal people without being a demon or fiend. That's why I brought up the original Megaten, because a good amount of it starts out relatively normal and gradually goes into insanity, and then the nukes dropped. But it's never established why. I don't think there's ever been a full establishment in those early games as to why you couldn't use magic.
I don't think there was either.
And Hydra says, out of curiosity, what changes would you do if you ran a Devil Survivor session? I'm not willing to answer that right now because it's been a long, long time since I touched the Devil Survivor games. So I'm not in the position where I could answer that. What I will say that I'd be hesitant to run them in that traditional dungeon crawl approach that's done there. And Don says, if it's something like the Raido Kuzunoha or Digital Devil Saga titles, the fact the main character couldn't use magic would make too much sense. I already covered Digital Devil Saga, and as far as the various Kuzunohas, even the ones outside of Raido, I'd be hesitant. Especially given the whole body switching thing you did in the original Devil Summoner, and the one that one of your companions does in Soul Hackers. Well, that and the fact that you're in a virtual world, and I know I can hear someone in the distance going, "What about 9? What about 9?" I am well aware that 9 at one point was supposed to be multiplayer, but I want to know who thought those hacking battles were a good idea.
No.
Just though it is kind of amusing that the online game Imagine is kind of built off of the bones of 9.
Mm-hmm.
But I can see there's a lot of stuff I can like with the setup. I will note with demons, put a pin in how character creation works with demons, because that's something I feel like I'm gonna come back to when fusion is fusion and evolution, because that's something I could see being a royal pain. Don says, didn't Raido have a talking cat that was some kind of advocate for the Yatagarasu? I don't remember if Goto was a advocate for the Yatagarasu, but he did have a talking cat, and having it be named Goto is amusing. especially given the original Godo. But that's a story for another week. I believe the next segment that is going to be done is the rules proper. Some of which we kind of hinted at here, but more importantly, it's going to be on the rules itself, the way checks work, and the way combat works. Which, because of the fact that we're dealing with checks, we'll probably end up covering negotiations at around that point.
I think negotiations was the one after that.
Yeah, you're right. It is. But that will do it for this week. We'll be back here soon, and I will be back here Saturday afternoon with a unexpected interview, but certainly an enjoyable one. So until then, on behalf of the good brothers present and not present, my name is Mildra. I am your gaming monk. Stay fucking frosty, everybody.
Thank you.